On today's episode,
He was a pilot, a smuggler, a risk-taker so bold that even the cartels feared him, and the CIA needed him. And when the truth threatened to surface, his life ended in a hail of bullets behind a halfway house in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This is the story of Barry Seal, the man who flew secrets for governments.
And then it turns out that there's a long history of this guy, Barry Seals, who's a CIA operative, who was flying in cocaine, dropping it off in Mena, Arkansas, all known about by the Clintons. Everybody was aware of it.
But I was working for the feds, and so he just says, Roger, I was facing 3 life sentences, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And he put his hands up over his eyes, and the tears ran between his eyes. He said, I'm so sorry.
No protective custody. Barry's lawyers begged. They pleaded. They explained that the Medellín Cartel had put a contract on his life. The judge refused to budge.
you don't need a formal conspiracy when interests align.
He was a pilot, a smuggler, a risk-taker so bold that even the cartels feared him, and the CIA needed him. And when the truth threatened to surface, his life ended in a hail of bullets behind a halfway house in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This is the story of Barry Seal, the man who flew secrets for governments, cash for cartels, and paid the ultimate price. Born July 16, 1939, in Baton Rouge, a kid obsessed with flying. By the time he was a teenager, he was already one of the youngest licensed pilots in the country. He trained at Pan Am, became a commercial pilot, but ambition and adrenaline led him down a different runway. In the late 1960s and early 70s, Seal started running missions on the side, small jobs at first, but he had a gift. He could fly anything anywhere under any radar, and people noticed, dangerous people, powerful people. Soon he shifted into the world of drug smuggling, but unlike most smugglers, Seal had something they didn't: military-grade flying skills and a willingness to push past any limit. By the early 1980s, Barry Seal became one of the most valuable pilots in the Medellín Cartel. He ran tons, not pounds, of cocaine into the United States. His planes were modified, souped up, and perfectly timed to slip through the cracks. The DEA estimated he made millions per flight. Seal wasn't just a smuggler, he was legendary, and legends attract attention. Here's where his story crosses into the shadows. Multiple public sources, testimonies, and former intelligence personnel have stated that Barry Seal was connected to CIA operations in Central America. It was the era of the Contra War, covert weapons drops, and black-budget operations. Seal claimed he flew missions where guns went south and drugs came north. Nothing was ever fully proven in court, but many investigators say the pattern is too strong to ignore. What is confirmed? Seal became an informant for the DEA, and the moment he did, he set himself on a collision course with two powerful worlds. In 1984, Seal flew a mission over Nicaragua carrying hidden cameras. The photos he returned with revealed members of the Medellín Cartel loading drugs alongside members of the Nicaraguan Sandinista government. It was explosive, dangerous, and politically valuable. According to reports from that time, Seal believed these photos would protect him, that the US government would shield him because he delivered something huge. But when the photos were leaked to the public, they exposed Seal to the cartel, exposed him to the world, and suddenly he was no longer protected. This part of the story exists in a fog of allegations, witness statements, and political theories. During the 1980s, Air America pilots, Contra operatives, and various investigators claimed that flights connected to Seal's operations passed through Mena, Arkansas. Some whistleblowers alleged that state officials at the time allowed the flights to operate with minimal interference. One of those officials was allegedly then-Governor Bill Clinton. Clinton has always denied any involvement, and no court has ever proven he was aware of or connected to Seal's activities. But the allegations persisted because too many people from too many directions repeated similar stories. Whether these claims were true, or whether Seal's operations simply became a magnet for conspiracy, remains part of his legend. Seal's relationship with federal agencies became complicated. He thought he had earned protection. But when his case went to court, the judge ordered him to live at a halfway house in Baton Rouge as part of his probation. No security, no guards, no witness protection, and everyone, the cartel, the government, anyone watching, knew exactly where he would be every night. February 19th, 1986, Barry Seal pulled into the Salvation Army halfway house parking lot. Moments later, Colombian hitmen opened fire. Dozens of rounds tore through his car. Seal died instantly. 3 cartel gunmen were caught and convicted. But the shadow behind the trigger, the deeper motivations, the unanswered questions, still hang in the air nearly 4 decades later. Who was Barry Seal, really? A reckless smuggler, a secret intelligence asset, a man caught between 2 governments, or a man used by both? His story lives at the crossroads of truth, rumor, and the kind of secrets that rarely make the history books. But one thing is clear: he flew too high, too fast, and too close to the machinery of power. And when a man knows too much, sometimes the sky stops being a place to escape and becomes the place where the fall begins. Barry Seal's life reminds us of one thing: in the world of covert deals and silent wars, the truth is never simple, and the people who live inside that truth rarely live long enough to tell the whole story.
Yeah, overall, that was a pretty good clip for short form content, kind of rough explanation, overview of Barry Seal's life. Sorry if you can hear the dogs barking in the background. It's not a good day for ambient noise, but I think some of the pieces that they missed were his early years. I've seen some documentaries on Barry Seal, and his early years are sort of shrouded in mystery in terms of his involvement in military, potentially Air Force, whatever. It's not as simple as they painted it here, where he goes to work for Pan Am. I think there's more to it than that, and I don't have enough of the details off the top of my head, but those early years, like I said, are shrouded in mystery. But yeah, they did a good job of painting the connection to Clinton. Always been unsubstantiated, but a lot of strong evidence there, So, I mean, even American Made, a Hollywood-backed film, made that connection. So, I think that is definitely the case, and the connection to Clinton and Bush and the levers of power at that level is what ultimately led to his demise. Like this clip did a very good job of showing, was clear that I think that he was set up by the fact of how the court acted. They could have protected him and hung him out to dry on purpose so that he would get whacked. And that seems to be to protect probably people at the highest levels, like I said, Clinton and Bush.
Barry was ordered to report there every evening at 6 p.m. Same time, same place. No security, no bodyguards, no protective custody. Barry's lawyers begged. They pleaded. They explained that the Medellín Cartel had put a contract on his life. The judge refused to budge. Barry was a public spectacle. He had to face the consequences. The cartel was watching. Of course they were watching. They had been watching since 1984. Here's how the assassination came together. This is the part that reads like a thriller. After the leaked photographs from the Nicaragua sting, the Ochoa brothers met in Medellín in late 1985. They put a bounty on Barry Seal's head, $1 million for confirmed kill. The contract was given to a top cartel enforcer named Miguel Velez. Velez recruited 2 Colombian hitmen named Luis Quintero and Bernardo Vasquez. They flew to Miami. They acquired weapons. They drove to Baton Rouge in October 1985. They studied Barry's movements for 4 months. They knew his schedule better than his wife did. They knew he arrived at the Salvation Army at 6 p.m. They knew he parked in the same spot every time. They knew he was unarmed, unguarded, and predictable. On February 19th, 1986, they were ready. At 5:45 p.m., the brown Buick pulled into the Salvation Army parking lot at 2800 Airline Highway. At 5:58, Barry's white Cadillac turned off the highway. He parked. He grabbed his briefcase. He reached for the door handle. Quintero stepped out of the Buick first. He walked directly to the driver's side window. He raised the MAC-10. He fired 7 rounds at point-blank range. The first bullet entered the left side of Berry's skull. 3 more hit his torso. 1 severed his spine. 2 missed and shattered the windshield. The whole thing took less than 4 seconds. Berry Seal was 46 years old. His left hand was still gripping a piece of paper. Investigators recovered it from the car. The paper had a phone number written on it in Berry's handwriting. The number belonged to the office of Vice President George H.W. Bush. The shooters got back in the Buick and drove away. They were arrested 2 days later in a hotel in Baton Rouge after a tip-off. They were tried in 1987, convicted of first-degree murder, and sentenced to life without parole in Louisiana State Prison. They never named the man who hired them. They didn't have to. Everyone knew. Pablo Escobar had ordered the hit personally. But here's what the FBI didn't see coming. The aftermath of Berry's murder triggered a cascade of investigations that would dog American intelligence for the next decade. Within weeks of the assassination, congressional staffers began asking questions about Mena, Arkansas, about the C-123K cargo plane Berry had used in Nicaragua, about what really happened on those Iran-Contra flights. In October 1986, 8 months after Berry's death, a Sandinista anti-aircraft battery shot down a cargo plane over southern Nicaragua. The plane was full of weapons. 1 crew member survived. His name was Eugene Hassenfuss. He told investigators the plane was part of a CIA-backed Contra resupply operation. The plane itself, registered to Southern Air Transport, was identified through tail numbers as the same C-123K provider that Berry Seal had flown the previous year. The Fat Lady. That single fact unraveled the Iran-Contra scandal. Oliver North started shredding documents in his White House office. Robert McFarlane resigned in disgrace and attempted suicide. President Reagan went on television to admit weapons had been sold to Iran. 14 administration officials were indicted. 11 were convicted. Berry Seal, dead in a Baton Rouge parking lot, had become the most consequential witness in modern American history, even from the grave. The Medellín Cartel didn't last much longer. Pablo Escobar was killed on a Medellín rooftop on December 2nd, 1993, after a 16-month manhunt. Jorge Ochoa surrendered to Colombian authorities in 1991 and served a reduced prison sentence. The cartel was dismantled. But the cocaine never stopped. Other organizations filled the vacuum. The Cali Cartel, the Mexican federations, the trade adapted. It always does. Berry's wife Deborah and his children fought for years over what was left of his estate. Most of his cash was buried. Some of it has never been recovered. In 2015, his daughter sued Universal Pictures over the film American Made, alleging the studio had used Berry's life story without proper licensing. The case was eventually settled out of court. The Tom Cruise movie made Berry Seal look like a charming rogue, a wise-cracking pilot caught up in something bigger than himself. The reality was harder. Berry Seal moved enough cocaine to fuel an American addiction crisis that killed tens of thousands of people. He laundered hundreds of millions of dollars. He worked for the most violent drug organization in human history. And when the heat came, he flipped, not out of conscience, but out of self-preservation. He bet he could outsmart the cartel, outsmart the DEA, outsmart the CIA, and walk away rich and free. He was wrong. Berry Seal spent the last 6 months of his life knowing exactly what was coming. His lawyer asked him in January 1986 why he didn't leave the country, why he didn't go into hiding. Berry's answer was recorded in court documents. He said he was tired of running. He said the cartel would find him eventually. He said if he stayed in Baton Rouge, at least he could see his kids on weekends. He showed up at the Salvation Army on February 19th at 6 p.m. because the judge had ordered him to. He could have skipped it. He could have driven anywhere else. He didn't. He parked in his usual spot. He reached for his briefcase. The bullets were already on their way. That's the real story of Berry Seal, not the Tom Cruise movie, not the charming smuggler, not the patriot who took down a cartel. The truth is more uncomfortable. Barry Seal was a brilliant pilot who chose to fly for monsters because the money was too good to refuse. He betrayed those monsters when the law caught up with him, and the monsters did what monsters do. They sent men with submachine guns. They didn't miss. If you found this story fascinating, hit subscribe. We drop a new mob and cartel documentary every week. And drop a comment below. Who do you think really ordered Barry Seal's murder? Was it just the cartel? Or was someone in Washington happy to see him silenced? Let us know.
Yeah, that video is pretty terrible. I don't know who made this documentary, but the framing of the story of Barry Seal is, they're wearing it on their sleeve in this one. So very much pro-government, which I think is a little ridiculous. But interesting nonetheless. And I think the facts that they laid out in terms of Barry Seal's movements in some of his final days are interesting. And it makes me think that he probably went to his death accepting his fate and knowing that he couldn't really escape. So I think the way that they kind of tried to frame it more towards the end, where he was trying to outsmart everyone, I think is actually bullshit. That might have been the case initially, but towards the end there, where he's doing this is a guy who has military training. He's been part of the CIA for decades at this point. I mean, he knew what he was doing. So for him to operate in that fashion doesn't make a lot of sense, especially considering what he knows is coming. He definitely knows a hit squad is on the way at this point. So for him to be going to the same place and driving the same car and doing the same thing, those are basics that he should have known not to do if he was trying to avoid getting whacked, which makes me think he kind of knew there was nothing left to do and was accepting of his fate and decided, let's just make this quick and easy. That's what I think when I hear this documentary. So much can be said about Barry Seal. I mean, Arkansas, Boys on the Track are connected to this one. We're talking about Gary Webb in my bigger series where we do documentary deep dives. So I thought talking about Barry Seal with some short form content, who is also related and we'll probably look into as well, would be interesting. So that's why we're talking about Barry Seal today.
So he started talking, and he just told about how that Bill Clinton was, he paying him off there in Mena, and that the CIA was unloading him, and they'd put everything in his name. He said, they made the scapegoat out of me. He said, and I was charged in 3 states with life sentences.
Right.
With the DEA. And I went to work for him, and I said, they all DEA. He said, every one of them. I said, he just put his hands up over his eyes, and the tears came down between. He said, Roger, I just couldn't do 3 life sentences. I just couldn't. I went to work for him. Now, you're under my umbrella. Anything I get, you get. You can save your money, new passports, your family all can live anywhere you want to in the world, never be bothered again. So bring your head honcho over. And real nice DEA agent. I really liked him. We'd have been on the same side. We'd have been buddies.
Right.
Jake Jacobson. And so he came down, a long, lanky fellow. I think he's a crop duster or something, Alabama. And so he just said, you can come tomorrow in first class with Maury and testify before a grand jury, or I can take you down tonight in chains. And the only place, if I do that, the only place you're going to ever see your family again is in a federal penitentiary visiting room. He said, I guarantee you that. Man, I'm coming to first class.
I was going to say, that's not a hard decision.
Yeah, it's Roger Reeves. I don't know the full story of Roger Reeves. Very interesting character, involved with Barry Seal apparently, and involved with the Cali Cartel and all those guys. I mean, and this guy, he's hit the podcast circuit a few years ago. So hearing his stories, I mean, this guy was there, first-hand witness, so super interesting stuff.
I got out of prison after the 2 years, and I'd heard Barry had turned. Somebody, the lawyer or something, said, watch out. So I was watching, hadn't been out long, and I was watching the news, and there's Ronald Reagan blue eyes on television looking right in it. You can see it today. So we have absolute proof that the communist Sandinista government is in the cocaine running business. And there's Barry's plane on the runway, bellied in, OC-126.
God.
And I thought, my guts went to ice water like, oh shit. Oh boy. So the phone rang just a few minutes later, and Barry, how you doing, Roger? I'm doing all right. He said, I'm coming out tonight. I'll meet you in this French restaurant down here at 9 o'clock. I said, all right. So I came in at 9 o'clock, and I looked around. Everybody in there is 35, 45 years old. Maybe a little bulge here. I thought, you son of a bitch. And he's leaning backside, and he's gotten fat. And I walked up to him, and I said, are you wired, Barry? And he said, no, I'm not. I said, well, I'm not going to talk. You do all the talking. So he went to telling me how that he had been protected and how that he was a scapegoat for the gentleman in Mena, Arkansas, and the CIA had been unloading him. And his protection went away from him when the shit hit the fan down there with, what was it, Colonel, anyhow, what was that, Iran-Contra?
Iran-Contra, Oliver North?
Oliver North and Iran-Contra. All that blew up, and it was too big for Reagan to stay quiet. Mm-hmm. So he told. So Barry had gone down with Jake Jacobson, a DEA agent from Alabama. I liked him. And they had brought back 1.5 tons of cocaine and bellied it in on takeoff. He just pulled the power and bellied it in and on the runway. And they called for Pablo Escobar to bring another airplane up. So you can see Pablo Escobar and 2 or 3 of the generals carrying the cocaine on their shoulders. I'll give you that book. Right there it is. I forget what page. It's not that book. That's mine.
Okay.
But the one, Kings of Cocaine.
Okay.
Show him with stripes. And he put a camera inside the plane and a camera outside the plane, of that downed airplane. And he took over 1,000 photographs. Click, 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 click. He said he's afraid they're going to hear it. And then after they got the 1.5 tons already unloaded from that crash plane into the other big turboprop, he went back in and took the cameras out and put them in his pocket. He was gutsy now. I ain't lying to you, because they would have chopped him in little pieces. They don't mess around. Him and that DEA agent would have been killed instantly. Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
He might have killed him a piece at the time. So anyway, so now he's working for the feds, and so he just says, Roger, I was facing 3 life sentences, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And he put his hands up over his eyes, and the tears ran between his eyes. He said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just couldn't do it. And I said, are they all DEA agents? And he said, every one of them. I said, bring your head honcho over. So he brought a nice fella over, Jake Jacobson, tall fella, and I drinking my Chevy Regal there, and we had several together, and he just says, now you can come down tomorrow to Miami, first class with Maury, or I can take you down tonight in chains. And if I take you down tonight in chains, the only place you're going to ever see your family again as long as you live is in a federal penitentiary visiting room. Which is it? I said, I'm going first class, mister.
So this is a little more detail on the same story that he told in the last clip about Barry Seal flipping. The photographs that he described are famous pictures. They 100% exist. And you see that scene in American Made, actually. This is really interesting to hear. And it really makes me question just everything that went down, because it sounds like Barry was cooperating. It sounds like you have Roger Reeves cooperating. So why did Barry get hit? You mean to tell me that a guy who turned state's witness, couldn't be protected? Federal witness couldn't be protected? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. You know, sounds like Barry was higher on the totem pole in the network or the operation than Roger Reeves was, and may have known things that couldn't be allowed to get out. And so him turning in relation to Iran-Contra, someone made it so that he was available as a target for the cartel hitmen. And then, of course, the cartel hitmen get captured because they can't get back. That story can't be allowed out either. So they are thrown in a prison for the rest of their lives and told, hey, shut the hell up or you'll get whacked too, right? So that to me feels a little bit more realistic than the cartel just getting in and being able to get at them. Someone was pulling the levers behind the scenes to make it so that Barry Seal was a more accessible target for those guys. Because it just doesn't make sense after he's turned. He's cooperating. So if he's cooperating, it means someone on the inside, likely Bush-related, Reagan-related, Oliver North-related, doesn't want Barry Seal talking.
Barry Seal was flying drugs from South America and dropping them off in Mena, Arkansas, and then they would go and pick them up in the woods. They had a drop point. 2 kids were hanging out in the woods, and they witnessed it accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
They were murdered. And the official story was they had done drugs, and they laid down, fell asleep on train tracks. And the autopsy showed that they'd been stabbed multiple times. So then there's an investigation comes through. And then it turns out that there's a long history of this guy, Barry Seals, who's a CIA operative, who was flying in cocaine, dropping it off in Mena, Arkansas, all known about by the Clintons. Everybody was aware of it. They made a movie about it with Tom Cruise. In the movie, Tom Cruise actually gets arrested for smuggling cocaine, and Bill Clinton gets him off. They're like, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. He goes, no, she's going to get a phone call, and I'm going to walk right out of here. And it turned out to be exactly how it happened. He winds up going to testify, gets murdered on his way to the trial with George Bush's phone number in his pocket. The whole story is like completely crazy.
Wow, yeah.
I don't know if that's true about the phone number of George Bush in his pocket. It's always been the rumor. I don't know if it's ever been fully proven, but we've seen a couple clips today who have said that. But so it's definitely possible. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. I definitely think there's a clear connection to Bush Sr. Yeah, and the 2 boys in Mena, Arkansas, I've always called them boys on the track, the boys on the tracks, because of a documentary that's on YouTube. We will be watching that documentary at some point and going through it in significant detail, because it's an incredible story. And I think it's pretty does a fantastic job of documenting the connection to Clinton. And the guy who does the autopsy on the kids is also very well connected to Clinton, and made up the story that the kids smoked like 20 marijuana cigarettes and then passed out on the tracks and that they got hit by a train. Clearly not the case whatsoever. And that autopsy guy went on to make a bunch of claims in his career that were completely BS, totally wrong. So he has no legitimacy, and he's clearly connected to the Clintons. He got Clinton's mom off. The whole story of the boys on the track is wild. A bunch of witnesses start to come out, and they all start dying and very suspicious. I mean, it is just one of the craziest things in the world, and it's so shocking to me that not more people know about that one. And it is connected to Barry Seal, 100%. Barry Seal was likely, if not Barry Seal himself, his network. Like we've seen some clips of Roger Reeves today. It wasn't just Barry Seal; it was the Barry Seal network. I think Seal was at the top of a group of guys who were operating those planes, bringing guns from places down to Nicaragua, taking drugs in exchange and sending it to U.S. streets. This is what fueled the crack epidemic. And so the Barry Seal network was the one who was dropping the cocaine in Mena, which led to those 2 boys being murdered, unfortunately. So we'll be watching that documentary at some point for the channel, but it's such a crazy story.
By 1983, he had completed over 100 flights. The cartel estimated he had moved between $3 billion and $5 billion worth of cocaine into the United States. His personal earnings, conservatively, $60 million. Some estimates run higher. He had cash buried on his properties. He had Swiss accounts. He had Cayman Islands, shell companies. He owned strip malls in Louisiana and a cattle ranch in Honduras. He had a wife named Deborah. He had 5 children. He coached his son's Little League team on weekends in Baton Rouge. He attended Catholic Mass irregularly. He cheated on his wife constantly. He flew his mistresses to the Bahamas in his private Learjet. He carried a briefcase containing 2 pistols, 3 passports, and roughly $200,000 in cash at all times. He weighed 310 pounds and was working on his 4th heart attack risk factor. And the Drug Enforcement Administration had no idea who he was. Not yet. But here's where it gets interesting. The trap was already closing, and Barry didn't see it. In 1983, the DEA was running an operation out of Florida, targeting the Medellín Cartel. They had wiretaps. They had informants. They had, most critically, a small smuggling crew in Fort Lauderdale that mentioned Barry Seal by name. The DEA didn't know exactly who he was, but they knew the call sign, they knew the planes, and they were watching. On March 29, 1983, federal agents raided a property in Fort Lauderdale. Inside, they found cocaine, ledgers, and references to a Louisiana pilot they called the Fat Man. Within 90 days, a federal grand jury in Florida indicted Barry Seal for conspiracy to import cocaine. He was arrested. He posted bail. He was facing 10 years to life. Now here's what most people don't know. Barry Seal didn't panic. He didn't run. He didn't lawyer up and prepare a defense. Instead, he flew to Washington, D.C. He walked into the offices of Vice President George H.W. Bush's task force on drug interdiction, and he made an offer that would change history. He told them he could deliver Pablo Escobar, personally, on video, in a sting operation, if they made his charges go away. The Vice President's task force kicked it down to the DEA. The DEA was skeptical. Barry was a known smuggler, but the offer was too big to ignore. They cut a deal. Barry Seal would become a confidential informant. He would continue working for the Medellín Cartel. He would record everything. He would set up the biggest cocaine sting in American history. In exchange, his federal charges would be reduced, and he would be paid as a federal asset.
Yeah, again, I think some of these more productionalized, like quote-unquote professional documentaries, the kind of stuff you would see on cable TV, are complete BS. I mean, he didn't walk into George Bush's office and make this offer. All the evidence suggests that Bush was involved in the operation. He was involved in Iran-Contra. He is likely involved in the drug smuggling components of that whole thing. So the idea that he walked in, this is clearly meant to paint Bush as not involved, right? Which is, doesn't seem to be the case. So very, very poor framing from that perspective.
These 2 men are federal drug agents. The 3rd man is Baton Rouge pilot and soldier of fortune, Barry Seal,
very careful
described by some law enforcement officials as one of the biggest arms and drug smugglers in the country. But it was Seal, not the drug agents, who asked us to videotape the meeting. This rendezvous between Barry Seal and agents of the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency took place outside a motel near Miami International Airport. The suspected smuggler wanted us to secretly videotape the meeting for what he called self-protection.
I received a sum of $10,000 today in cash and $100 bills. Payment received in payback of a loan that I made to a DEA operative who's working in this covert operation at this time.
Barry Seal is an enigma.
I think the most interesting part of that clip was the term soldier of fortune. I've seen several documentaries about Barry Seal who use that term. And when I say document, I mean like these sort of productionalized cable TV docs, the ones that are not very good. and clearly meant to sort of frame the whole thing in a very specific light. This is narrative control, so it's by no means truth-seeking. It's narrative control. Don't get that twisted. Doesn't mean it's not interesting and you can't find some information in it, but just place it in the proper context. And the use of the term soldier of fortune is so interesting because when you watch Barry Seal documentaries or engage in, researching Barry Seal through the narrative control of the sort of cable TV docs, they use that term constantly. Soldier of fortune, soldier of fortune, soldier of fortune. Why? Why are they doing that? I think it's really because they are trying to create a narrative around Barry Seal of him being this bigger than life character who's out there doing this stuff on his own, right? It's meant to really craft subconsciously in a very subtle way an idea in your mind that says, oh, he's not connected to the CIA. He's not connected to any major political forces. He's not connected to something bigger. He's operating on his own volition as the soldier of fortune, right? And they do this stuff a lot. They did it with Epstein. They kept talking about Epstein as this man of mystery, this great Gatsby-like character, right? Who's just out there with money and charisma and manipulating all these people, and he's in no way connected to some bigger elements. And they do this when people like this get caught and get left to hang out in the wind. They start to paint that narrative in these very subtle ways so that you will be. They're not telling you directly. They're using terms like soldier of fortune. Man of mystery, right? Like they paint a picture that subconsciously you start to craft a narrative in your own head that there's no way this guy is connected to something else. He's just operating as though he's a soldier of fortune. He was driven by ambition and adrenaline and this and that, and that's always the case, right? And so I think it's very interesting to see that in action right here in this clip, because to me that's obviously what's going on. And like I said, as you watch this stuff more and more, you see it more and more, and you're able to flag it. The only reason I could flag it so quickly is because I've watched a bunch of stuff on Barry Seal. I think he's an incredibly interesting character. Like I said, connected to something much bigger when it comes to Iran-Contra and all the stuff that was going on in the 70s and 80s. All of it leading back to Bush. He's 100% connected to something significantly larger. And it's so interesting when you watch enough of it, you hear these terms over and over again, all these different places. It's almost reminds me, it's reminiscent of those clips that you see on the internet sometimes of like news media, mainstream media outlets using the same exact term for describing any type of news story, whatever. And they'll splice all the clips together. It's like 50 different news channels using the exact same term. It's very interesting. And that's how they do narrative control. They use language to like supplant ideas in your head. And it's very subtle, and it's very effective. Whether you believe it or not, it's very effective, and it affects all of us. And I think this is an example of what I'm talking about. And it's just, to me, it's so interesting. So interesting. Soldier of fortune. That's all he is, folks. Not connected to anything bigger. Anyways, we're going to end it there for today. That's Barry Seal. We will definitely be talking about him more in the future. Like I said, this month we're going to be focusing on Gary Webb, but I think Gary Webb is going to lead us down a road that will include a lot of content related to Gary Webb, Iran-Contra, Barry Seal, the boys on the track, Nina, Arkansas. There's so many pieces to this puzzle that are interconnected or related in tertiary ways that we're going to end up touching on, and Barry Seal will definitely be a part of that. So we will be talking about him more in the future. This is just a little bit of a taste. I thought we could dive in. Such an incredible, interesting guy, and an incredible story. So I hope you enjoyed some of those. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe. I bring you this kind of content all the time, several drops a week. So if you want to stay connected, Subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world. All the engagement is absolutely critical at this stage of the channel. You're like getting in on the ground floor. So help me build this thing up. If you have ideas for content, drop them in the comments below. What do you want to learn about? What kind of conspiracies do you think are interesting? Let me know down below, and definitely help drive what's on the channel next. Anyways, I'll leave it there. Thanks for joining me. Hope you enjoyed. We'll be back next time. See you then.